Good afternoon. My name is Hugh Forrest. I am the director of the South by Southwest Interactive Festival. I want to say welcome to the 2012 edition of our little party. Before Baratunde Thurston takes over for today's keynote presentation, a few thanks are most definitely in order. First, it is important to thank the Army of Volunteers. We have approximately 2,000 volunteers out there who are making the show happen. These people come here from all over Austin, from all across the country, all around the world. They sacrifice their time to make this event happen. As capable as our staff is, the event could not happen without our volunteers, so please thank them when you see them. Second, and even more important, I want to thank you, the attendees, who truly make this event click. So thank you for bringing your world-changing innovations and mind-expanding inspirational thinking to Austin in March. Thank you for the passion and the energy and enthusiasm that you have for this event. Thank you for being so open to meeting new people and exploring new things and new ideas while you're in Austin, as well as the other 51 weeks of the year. Thank you for what you do to make South by Southwest such a highlight for so many people. Thank you for being the people that everyone wants to learn from now. You guys are the rock stars of the future, and the future is now. Please give yourself a big round of applause because you deserve it. I want to also thank everyone for being so patient in yesterday's registration badge pickup madness. The rain brought so many people indoors that things were a lot slower than what is acceptable by our standards. We have refined our registration badge check-in process a lot over the last few years, but yesterday showed that we still need to improve this a little more. I assure you that the process will be more efficient in 2013. Again, for those of you who were stuck in line for so long, thanks for maintaining your cool while you waited to pick up your credentials. Also, at the risk of sounding flip, thanks for helping bring much-needed rain to Central Texas. As you may know, we have been in the worst drought in our history over the last 2 years, so the city of Austin appreciates your help in generating this much-needed precipitation. Other things that we always appreciate are your feedback and input and suggestions. You can email me anytime at hugh@sxsw.com. South by Southwest is a community event. The strength of the event is the community. The more input and feedback and brainstorms and suggestions we have, the better we can be for the future. We'll also want to say that for 2013, we begin the panel picker entry process on Monday, June 25th. As for 2012, South by Southwest is an ever-changing beast. Stay attuned to these changes by watching the 3-minute update on the South by Southwest website every day. As well, some users were experiencing a bug in the South by Southwest Go app yesterday. That bug has now been fixed, so please download the most current version. Finally, remember to check out the Screenburn Arcade, which is all about gaming. That goes on today and tomorrow at the Palmer Event Center, which is just across the river. And Palmer is also host of the opening party tonight, is the host space for the opening party tonight. That'll be a great time. The rain will stop. It is covered. Lots of great people, lots of great networking, lots of great fun. Now it is my great pleasure to turn over the microphone to Baratunde Thurston. I last saw him at the Shorty Awards in New York about 11 months ago, where he was being awarded the Foursquare Mayor of the Year. He is a longtime member of the South by Southwest community, having served on many panels over the years. He is a past MC of the South by Southwest Interactive Awards, as well as Frey Cafe. He is witty, he is eloquent, and he is very, very passionate about his beliefs. These are all qualities that we value very highly at South by Southwest. Baratunde is also author of the new book, How to Be Black. He will be doing a couple of book readings while at South by Southwest. I will let him tell you the exact times and locations of these book signings. Please join me in welcoming our first keynote speaker for South by Southwest 2012. That is Baratunde Thurston. Have a good one.
I am a very social dude. I love people. I love interacting with them. I love finding out what their passions are. I find it hard to not be social. I'm like a reverse introvert. But there was this one day a few months ago, something happened I have to share with you. I went to a bar, and I didn't go for the people. I just went for the alcohol. I just wanted a little relationship with whiskey and to tune the world out. And unfortunately for me, I was seated next to a very chatty person. She was full of questions and full of excitement about everything. That's the worst overlap for somebody trying to be antisocial. The first thing she said, "So what do you do?" I hate that as an ice-breaking question. I just hate it so much. And I didn't express that hate to her, but I did feel it. I didn't say, "Hey, look, I'm over 30 years old. My friend circle is locked. This relationship isn't going to happen. Let's both cut our losses and move on." I didn't say that because I'm not cruel, because I still like people even when I hate them. So instead, I treated her the way you treat a parent who has gone 20 minutes over the allotted phone conversation time. Monosyllabic, disengaged responses, right? "So what do you do?" Comedian. "That's so amazing. That must be so much fun. Is it so much fun making people laugh?" It's cool. "Would you have a day job? I know lots of comics have day jobs. What's your day job?" "I work at The Onion." "Whoa! I love that website. It's so funny. I check it all the time. It must be crazy there. Is it crazy? Do you make each other laugh all the time?" I get my health care there. "Well, where do you live? What neighborhood do you live in?" "Brooklyn." "Brooklyn, we go hard. I love Brooklyn. Brooklyn's coming up. I got friends that live in Williamsburg. Do you love it? Is Brooklyn amazing?" "I sleep there." "Well, where'd you live before Brooklyn? You come here from somewhere else. Where'd you live?" "Boston." "A lot of schools in Boston." "You went to school in Boston, didn't you? Where'd you go to school? Where'd you go to school?" "Harvard." Holy shit. You mean to tell me you work for The Onion, you went to Harvard, you're like the whitest black guy I've ever met. That happened. And I had fantasies of slowly strangling her to death and reminding her that I'm also the last black guy you'll ever meet. But I chose freedom instead. I chose freedom. I wrote a book instead, and it has a very simple message that I think resonates. I think it really communicates what I'm about. I want to go back. I've got a longer story to share with you today. This is my great-grandfather. His name was Benjamin Lonesome. He was born in the late 1800s in Caroline County, Virginia, according to our family, born a slave and taught himself to read. Moved to Washington, D.C. in 1896, taught himself to read. Had two daughters, one of whom was my mother's mother, Lorraine Martin. Now, in 2005, when my own mother passed, I found out, my sister and I both at the same time, going through these files, that our grandmother was an historic figure. She was the first black employee in the U.S. Supreme Court building. Had no idea this was sitting in our family history. When the newspaper asked her, "What's it like to work in such an august building?" she said it was awe-inspiring. When they asked her supervisor what she thought of having the first Negro woman work in this building for her, she said, "It's just fine. Different expectations." Now, my grandmother was a proud woman. She was active in her community. She worked in the Sunday school. She traveled a lot. She didn't always pay the most attention to raising her daughter, my mother, who looked like this. Exactly. Oh, you see where I get it from now, right? It's the cheeks, yo. It's the cheeks. That's my mother, Arnita Lorraine Thurston, at 4 years old. Her mother sent her off in very rare fashion to boarding school at age 8 in rural Pennsylvania. Now, the communication style at the time meant there were letters that my sister and I also found. I want to share with you one of those letters. This is what an 8-year-old Arnita Thurston wrote to her mother. "Dear mother, I am having fun, but I am mad at you. I do not like it here. Please send me some cookies and a Sparkle Plenty doll. They can have dolls here. Please send them because I don't have anyone to play with. Yours truly, Arnita." And that's an adorable story. It's a sad story. She has terrible penmanship. Just atrocious. I don't care if she was 8. But I really want you to focus on the lower left corner of this letter because there is beautiful penmanship there and a different typeface and a different color. It says over. And when you flip that letter over, you get this. "If your little girl is dissatisfied, we'd be glad to have her bed for those who are anxious to come. Signed, Sister." This is like the NSA wiretapping in 1948. Clearly, my mom's demands for cookies and dolls was a national security threat that demanded such surveillance and interference. My mom didn't stay long in that environment, but for a time, she played the part of the modern, acceptable Negro woman. She worked on our high school newspaper. She wore a dress below the knee. She carried baskets around on the National Mall, probably full of conformist and loving attitudes toward her country. But then her social network changed. She started hanging out with dudes that looked like this. This man's name is El Dorado. Like the car. Some of you think you're cool. Some of you think you've known people who were cool. You aren't, and they weren't. This is the last cool dude to walk the earth. Look at him again. The shoes, the pants, the shirt, the fro, the length of him. He makes me want to rock a newspaper, typewriter, and landline telephone just to get back to that essence of cool where cool peaked in '64. A man named El Dorado made a phone call. My mom's changes and her evolution didn't stop there. She kept changing the circle of people she communicated and socialized with to folks like this. This is my mother and her best friends in the African Liberation Day parade walking down 16th Street in Washington, D.C., across from what is now Malcolm X Park. And right there in the heart of it all, my mama. If the revolution isn't televised, it may be photographed. You want your hair done up just so, because you never know what could come next. Now, her politics influenced my life and my sister's life and the city in which we lived at the time. Most kids had books, see Spot Run. We didn't have Spot in my house. Spot was like the oppressor. This is one of the first books I ever had. It's called This Is Apartheid. That will mess with you as a little kid. You know what I'm saying? I'm a little revolutionary, militant Tunde running around like, yes, my brothers and sisters, we must only eat Cocoa Puffs, all black everything. You know, like, what? I was just angry in general. I was like, my mama made me this way. Outside of our household, this was the common scene. A scene we've seen play out through a lot of American cities over a lot of decades. I remember when The Wire came on, it threw me off. You know, because I was like, I have seen this show before in 3D. It's like my neighborhood was just like The Wire, right? We had the police corruption, we had the murders, we had the drugs, everything The Wire had except for universal critical acclaim and the undying love of white people who saw it, right? My neighborhood was missing that. And so what did I do with all this? This grandfather who taught himself to read, grandmother who works in this barrier-breaking role, my mom who's in the streets, I go about and start helping make and distribute fake news. Ancestors are so proud. I've been at The Onion over 4 years now, and I've had a chance to be a part of some great stories, some history-making events. It's been my great privilege not only to play the role of Cooter Obama, but also President Obama, the mayor of Detroit, all three Supremes. I am all the black people in The Onion. I got like 50 jobs. The Onion's there to cover things in a way that other places won't when you look at what's happening in the world today. Right? We have seen stories about Iran worried U.S. might be building 8500 nuclear weapon, or this article generating thousands of dollars in ad revenue simply by mentioning new iPad. Or this one, which is really deep and near and dear to my heart. Man recalls simpler time when he only masturbated to still images on the internet. We miss those times when porn was static. Life is complicated now. And then this story. This is an amazing moment. Headline, Planned Parenthood opens $8 billion abortionplex. We ran this story almost a year ago in light of the funding challenges on Capitol Hill about Planned Parenthood, and this was a satirical take on it. Some people took it as true, and then the story died down. And when the Komen Foundation got all controversial a few weeks and months ago, the story found a resurgence online when a senator, actually a House of Representatives member, thought it was real and posted it to his Facebook because he's an idiot. But the more interesting part of that was his fans on Facebook were like, how did you get elected? It was you. You put him there. You're his fan on Facebook. That's how it happens. You gave him cover and support. But beyond that, what was really inspiring and exciting about this wasn't what we wrote about. It wasn't the way we distributed. It wasn't the amazing art. It was what the community did with this. Someone took this abortionplex concept and put it on Yelp. Took all the details in the story, created a venue called the Abortionplex in Topeka, Kansas, and then hundreds of people reviewed it in voice. This is the longest review of a non-existent place, I think, that exists in the world. Pros and cons. The buffet, like other Yelpers, I would agree to skip the fish. The rock climbing wall. I heard they're opening a Hot Topic to attract a younger crowd. You got people talking about the drinks, the taco, the length of the line. It goes on and on. We had unintentionally created a platform for other people's expression and comedy and satire. Now, what's fun and amazing when we do it, and we're not the only ones to do it. The Daily Show is killing it. Colbert with his Super PAC work is killing it. All sorts of online folks are killing it. Comedians have often played this rule of communicating truth indirectly. And I want to share something with you guys about another group of comics who are taking this to the next level. Take a look at this clip. This is an organization called Laughter Against the Machine, and they put together a tour that hit certain hot spots in the U.S., hit the border states, hit the South, hit Washington, D.C. and New York during Occupy Wall Street, and tried to bring comedy in focus to politics.
Foundational moments in the Jewish story is that of Abraham smashing his father's idols, right? And what comedians do is they take apart the world and they smash idols. Satirists take down powerful figures who, tower over the rest of us as these idols. And so comedy is a great way of taking a sledgehammer to the idols and shattering them so that we can all see truth beyond, this imposing figure towering above us.
I need this conversation to happen every time before I go on stage. I need to have this on the iPod. It's going to get on iPod. The next
Sacred clouds, redemption, sledgehammer truth, smashing idols.
Now, what that Occupy Judaism guy also said was that comedians are sacred clowns, which is just a fun concept. Smashing idols, it sort of rings true. It certainly boosts the ego of the comedian, obviously, but there is some truth to it, and it's been happening for a while in the world. I want to talk a little bit about that world, the world that we're in. What is it, and what is it becoming, and where does comedy and all this connectivity play a part? We're living in this world where change is the constant. And that's a buzzword phrase kind of thing, but you guys remember back in the Napster days when the music industry executives were like, can't wait for this internet thing to blow over. We can start selling CDs at ridiculous prices again, adding breakage to the contracts. That was a time that is no longer. Business as usual is unusual. Normal is abnormal. And that constant change creates some confusion. We're also in a time where everyone can create. The magic of our times is that everybody can have a voice. Some of the tragic of our times is that everyone can have a voice. You just got to read YouTube comments or listen to Michelle Bachman to feel what I'm talking about. But it's generally a good thing. We've got this connectivity, not only of everything, but of everyone to everything. The internet of crap is emerging for all of us, and it's a magical time. This creates a lot of noise, creates a lot of confusion, an abundance of information, a scarcity of attention. We in this room are especially familiar with it. Creates some tension and opportunity for clarity, an opportunity for trust. Because with all this noise and confusion, we look to institutions for trust, and they often come up short. The government, they try to shut it down. Religion, missing in action. Your parents, they're awkwardly texting you. The media, busy talking about the state of the media. So, who's left? You got comics, willing to speak truth to the youth and beyond. And when you see the examples I've shown so far, I'm talking about The Onion, an American fake news-based organization, The Daily Show, even the Laughter Against the Machine, that's still pretty domestic. But what happens when you smash that philosophy up against the world beyond the United States of America? What happens when you take a look at this map? 2012 Reporters Without Borders report on the status of press freedom. The darker the shade, the less free it is. And when you start touring around the world to see what those comedians are saying in the connected world where production is easier, you start to see some true revolutionary magic. Let's take a stop in Egypt. Bassem Youssef, a cardiologist during the revolution that sprung up by day, and then by night created a YouTube channel that attracted millions of people. He's inspired by Jon Stewart and does a show That is a send-up of the media, of the military, of the entire situation on the ground. Here is a clip of him right now. We can bring that volume down a bit. Considering that most of us don't speak Arabic, I'll talk over top of him. What he is doing is cutting back and forth. He's mock interviewing a media specialist who's explaining what's happening in Tahrir Square as a festival, as a carnival, as a party. People are buying and exchanging goods. Kids are acting a little rowdy, and that's about it. And he's juxtaposing that with those images and saying, really, it's just a festival, it's just a carnival? That's happening. And here's what he says to describe the work he's doing. We've just become so tense about so many things. If people deal with serious issues through laughter and sarcasm, it would be a great thing. And it's true, and he's gone on to greater success. He is still on YouTube, but has an actual TV deal in Egypt, reaching even more people. Let's continue to hop around that map to Nigeria. A very tense situation going on there right now. They have a satirical publication called Wazobia Report. Here's one of the pieces they run. Nigerians have more enemies per capita than any other country. Now, this is self-referential, but you can even get a feel for what Nigeria is like from that one story alone. This is referring to the act of everybody blaming everything on my enemies. Right? My enemies have done this, my enemies have done that. The article goes on to explain even babies in Nigeria seem to be born with enemies. Or this story, Nigerians to take course in airplane etiquette before boarding planes, which is all about the rowdiness and disruptiveness and lack of respect of the Nigerian populace in general in boarding planes. Or this story, which is much different. Nigerian government invents artificial intelligence, name it Reno Omokri, pass it off as real human being. The backstory on this one is they are writing this during the presidential campaign of Jonathan Goodluck, who was also the president at the time, and saying they couldn't find a spokesperson with a low enough moral compass to spout the propaganda and lies of this administration, so they had to create him out of thin air and also develop artificial intelligence in the process. Let's keep moving. China. Now, when The Onion deals with China, we did an issue where we pretended to have been bought out by a Chinese conglomerate, had to run all this pro-China material. This is one of the things that we did. And that's a strong statement, that's a nice statement, but it's a fake American media organization talking about a real place. What happens when you actually go to China and see what Chinese artists are saying? This is a clip of a video by Wang Bo, an animation specialist, who made this video about the Chinese education system, especially as it was in the 70s. The title of the video is Blow Up the School.
这是什么？鸡。
He said cock.
你个不要脸的小流氓！
校长万岁！
校长万岁！校长万岁！校长万岁！校长。
So what? Adorable, right? So what happens to that little character is he continues to get the crap beat out of him by everybody around, gets really upset, leaves the school, talks to his friend, the chicken, and they plot a plan to blow up the school. He tries to do it, he fails, gets kicked back out, actually dies, and the chicken takes revenge with the bomb and goes and blows up the school. It's like Angry Birds, but like for real, for real. And that dude is not yet arrested because he's walking this line in a society that seeks to harmonize political opinion by scrubbing it from the web. Venezuela, the real story of a dam at Guri that blew up due to some malpractice, the satirical version from El Chagir Bipolar, which essentially attributes it to an executive explaining that actually the dam explosion is part of a new energy system based on dams exploding. Or Afghanistan, which has its own version of The Office mixed with Yes Minister called The Ministry. It's everything we know about the mockumentary format set in the Ministry of Sanitation. Here's a clip.
نظر من این است که زنها از مردا که برتر و خوبتر هستند. زنها بیشتر نیم پیکر جامعه را تشکیل میدن. زنها است که زندگی است.
در هر حالت امروز زنها باید
اما در کشور ایسلند ما همیشه یه حق از زنها گرفته شده.
سکرتر بر من بسیار دلیل نگو.
و امیدوار هستم روزی بیاید که از رئیس جمهور گرفته تا وزیر، وکیل، مدیر همه کارا زنها باشن.
این تصاویر کلش دیلیت میکنی.
دیلیت میکنیم سر خاطرتان جمع باشه دیلیت میکنیم.
اگر برای خودتم یک پیسه که صحیح پیشنهاد شود چی میکنی؟ وزیر صاحب میکشی؟ وزیر صاحب شما
So that show is like The Office, but with stakes. They're dealing with women in politics, they're dealing with nepotism and corruption, they're dealing with assassination attempts in the highest levels of government. I corresponded with the man who created that show. The show is doing so well, the actual British ambassador to Afghanistan will be doing a cameo next season playing himself, allowing himself to be mocked in the process. And the best example yet, I actually found at this conference yesterday and had to edit the slides. Iran, a country that's very much in the news, especially in this country. Salman Arbabi is a former legit journalist that went out and covered war, but also had political cartoons that looked like this. That's funny. He was born in Iran, but then moved to the US just in time to miss a cutoff point where young men were no longer allowed to leave. There's a whole diaspora of young Iranian men flung around the world to be saved from military recruitment. He was among them. And the show that he and others created is called Parasite. And Parasite means TV static. It is a reference to the jamming of TV signals that takes place in Iran. They broadcast it, bootleg it. There's a whole economy built around it. Here is a clip of what they do.
15 گروه و ائتلاف رسما برای حضور در رقابت نفسگیر 12 اسفند آمادگی خودشون رو اعلام کردند.
خب این 15 تا کیا هستن حالا؟
جبهه پایداری انقلاب اسلامی هم که چند ماهی وارد عرصه انتخابات شده، همان حامیان سابق دولت و وزرای قبلی کابینه‌های نهم و دهم هستند. جبهه توحید و عدالت که طرفداران و نزدیکان دولت هستند. جبهه بصیرت و بیداری اسلامی که چند روز از اعلام رسمی اون نمیگذره. این جریان هم به نوعی از حامیان دولت است.
حق انتخاب تو رنگین کمان انتخاباتی این شکلی میتونی از این طرف از طرفداران دولت انتخاب کنی، نخواستی هم میتونی از اون طرف از حامیان دولت.
Right, so we can elect supporters of the president or advocates of the president. This show has had a real impact. It's been praised by our own media. Check this out.
I just want to tell you, you're like our show, but with real guts. And I'm proud to be considered in the fraternity of humorists that you guys are in.
Can you believe this?
And I'm honored to have you on the show. I'm proud of you. And humbled by you. Kambiz Hosseini and Salman Arbabi.
So how much impact has this had? You know, if you can almost measure the freedom of a society by its tolerance for the satirist. And when you look at the way the Iranian regime has responded to this TV show distributed kind of on the air, kind of on the internet through bootleg DVDs, you might be astounded to see what they say about it. This is what Salman said about what they do. Right? When you make fun of yourself, people are more receptive to what you have to say. Here's what the government is doing about what they're up to. They actually have SWAT teams going around Tehran removing people's satellite dishes so that they can't watch a comedy show. How weak is your government when this is what you have to resort to get things done? So I've talked about the expanse of the physical world, but I want to hit a note about the expanse of the digital world and where this philosophy also exists there. We're building all these tools and all these environments, and there's all this information, and the noise and the confusion exists there in a way that is quite similar. Here's an example, a very brief and light example, but I was playing around with Google Voice, and I was just trying to break it, because I like trying to break stuff. And they do this thing when you're sending a text message from the web, and you see the countdown of the number of characters you have left right there, and it iterates to message 2 when you bleed over the limit. I wanted to see what would happen if I just keep typing. If I just keep typing, let's keep going. And can I break Google Voice? Can I get to a point where it says like error, you're not allowed to do that? And I start making up all kinds of BS along the way, because I just think the whole SMS game is a sham and people should know about it. You see that? Really? Google copped the attitude. And I was like, really, Google? You're not just algorithms? There's a person in it. So I just kept typing to see what happened. I start ranting against Google, and then it mysteriously cut me off as soon as I started to criticize Google. But that was funny. That was funny. It didn't just say error number 3. It was like, come on now. Maybe you should use one of our other products like Gmail. Maybe you shouldn't email or text. You know what I'm saying? Like, this is not the way. There's an evolution going on in both of these tracks, both of these stories, that's related to comedy, but it's also related to code. I met Ben Silverman recently. He ran a big chunk of NBC for a while. He's got his hands in all kinds of buckets, and he said something which resonated deeply with me. He said, the code writer and the screenwriter have to work together. It's not enough to just post stuff on a digital platform. It has to be married and infuse themselves together. And that's part of the same arc. And I'll try to explain how I think these all come together. Because for me, it's not about comedy. It's not about content creation. It's much more than that. This is all about freedom. This is about the revolutionary act of teaching yourself to read, where reading, consuming information, is the rule-breaking thing. That's a step toward freedom. It's about the revolutionary act of taking a job in a certain building. It's about the revolutionary act of the daughter of that person protesting in the streets outside of that building. And it's about that woman's son's ability to mock the world with other people around the world in a way that tests the limits of speech and tests the limits of freedom. We need this level of production and creation and humanity to make more sense of the world. We need to understand, especially in this room, that we are creating magical tools, but that people around the world are using and depending on them. I met an Iranian revolutionary leader last year, and he gave me a hug and thanked me on behalf of all the American satirists for what we do. That's a humbling moment. It's not just YouTube. It's not just Facebook. It's bigger than that. At the same time, we have all this information and data flowing around us, and we have a tendency, especially in this room, to throw machines at it, to throw algorithms at it, to try to make sense of that world with more machines and with more code. There is a need for a storytelling narrative. There is a need for a humanity and a voice. There is a need for humor in all this, for that trusted voice to break through and work in concert with the code to get us to further steps of freedom. I found this in digging through the history of comedy and satires from an old school Roman dude named Horace. He said, a cultivated wit, one that badgers less, can persuade all the more. Artful ridicule can address contentious issues more competently and vigorously than can severity alone. There is room and need for severity. there is room and need for badgering. There's also room and need for artful ridicule and cultivated wit. And if that interests you, I want to keep sharing more of what's happening here because I think there is something happening here when you marry the creativity and potential of the tools with the story, fling it around the world and move that ball of freedom forward. That's what we're about here. We're about more than just the checking in, right? We're about the upgrading of our own humanity and of our own freedom. Thank you. If you have questions, we have 5 minutes. And there's a mic right there. I totally blew it on telling you guys that before the Sea of Humanity did that. But it's over there. And for the book signing stuff that Hugh mentioned earlier, 4:30 in the Samsung Blogger Lounge. We got 50 free books signed. And at 5:15 at the South by Bookstore, we'll be selling and signing books as well as shirts that say how to be black. The mic is over there for questions. There's no one standing there, so I can't shoot a flare, but I would. She's waving it around like a weapon. That's really unadvisable.
Hi, Baratunde.
Hey.
Kat Posey, founder
Kat
of Tech by Superwomen.
Great.
Thank you so much for your phenomenal presentation. You're talking about change being constant. What do you see is coming next?
More
What's next
change.
for us? Beyond that, generically, do you have some thoughts?
I shared a big chunk of that. I think the other change that I see coming, that I want to see coming in equal parts, is for people who are users of tools to keep becoming co-creators of tools. Like, these are all the tools that are building our future. And it's more than apps and it's more than sites. And so because that barrier to entry is so much lower, we've got to be inclusive about who those architects are as well as the inhabitants of the building. So that's a change that I see coming both as a reality and also as a need.
Hi, I'm Joseph Lopez. I'm a professor in San Antonio, which is about 60 miles from here.
Yeah, SA.
And I was just wondering, how do you convey comedy in regional areas or even local areas? Because I know that we can talk about global issues very well and people can laugh and think it's funny. But, how do we deal with like the east side and west side of Austin being segregated back in the 20s, and now it's kind of like now we have this white side and this black side, ethnocentric side.
You start a race war.
Yeah. But I mean, how do we talk about it so that people can laugh and understand process and things that you're bringing up like you do with the Onion so well? Have you ever seen any local things like that happening online that kind of build up?
I am sure that there are probably, especially coming out of the blogging world, examples of communities that are doing this already. Maybe it's an improv troupe, which I've seen happen in some places. Maybe it's a stand-up show. Maybe it's some kind of meetup. I don't have a specific Austin-focused example, but I would...
I mean, really anywhere. I mean, just if it was in New York
or
Brooklyn,
I mean, I'd even say that what the Laughter Against the Machine kids are doing is a part of that because it's a bit more. The guy you saw on screen, his name is Kamal Bell, and he does a show called the W. Kamau Bell Curve, Ending Racism in About an Hour. And he intentionally brings all kinds of people to that show. If you bring a friend of a different race, you get 50% off the ticket price. So maybe here in Austin, what you should do is have an East meets West show of some kind and give a discount, but you got to bring somebody from the other side to get in at that. You incentivize people with tax breaks. It's off the top of my head.
2 questions. My name is Saul Paul. I'm actually supposed to write a rap about what you just got through speaking about.
Okay.
And so, one, I want to make sure I pronounce your name right. Baratunde?
Baratunde.
All right. Without the accent, okay.
Yeah, without the accent.
Baratunde, not Baratunde.
It is,
right.
You know what? Let me just help you out real quick. I'm going to put it up on the screen. That's it.
Bam.
Baratunde.
Boom, hashtag boom. Okay?
Thanks.
Second, give me a quote, simple, it's a short rap. Don't a word, just something cool that I can integrate into my song.
I just gave you thousands of words, man. You want more words?
Yeah.
Nah.
Outdo El Dorado. Like El Dorado's definitely in it.
El Dorado's a great word. Also, barbecue, great word.
How to
And
be
even
black.
A delicious word. A delicious word. Yes.
Hi.
Hi.
Thank you so much. This was great. I'm Clarissa from the Ford Foundation.
Oh, cool.
I'm going to do a shout out to another satirical artist, illustrator named Gatto. I don't know if you've heard of him, but he also is doing great
Gatto.
political satire,
Yeah.
humor. But my question is really actually more of a, I was reading about your coverage of Occupy Wall Street and the way you were working that through different tools and things like the Twitter feeds, different social media platforms, as well as a police scanner app and so forth. And I just thought I wanted to ask you a little bit more about you, if you wouldn't mind kind of elaborating on that sort of reporting style that you do and, you know, how the tools that you're using and how that all is playing out.
I'm just trying to be like Andy Carvin, you know what I'm saying? Like,
Okay.
Occupy Wall Street had a raid that went down toward the end of the encampment. I got an email from friends who were there saying it's about to go down. They're like, it's about to go down. They paused between the words to match the song. And I thought about getting on my bike and going down there. Got a nice pink Schwinn cruiser named Roxy. Didn't do that. It's cold outside. And I also thought I can probably see more if I just stay home and tune in. And so I set up a number of feeds and sources. Occupy had its own web streams from several locations, so that was primary. There were their Twitter feed. They did local Twitter searches within a radius of certain zip codes, found traffic cams, and were able to get a different perspective from there, and then tune into the police scanner. So I had all this it's like the Matrix, you know, just kind of jack in, and you got to get a feel for what's going on. And what was unique for me about it was like, oh, I can probably see a lot more from my living room than I could if I were down there physically present, running and only seeing what my eyes could physically relate to me. So that's how it happened. I ran it for like 4 or 5 hours. I also found journalists who were there and made sure to retweet as many other people who were there as possible. That was part of the other sort of philosophy and strategy of the thing. Every once in a while, I live tweet something like the Super Bowls or Twilight movies because I hate them.
Me too.
But in the case of the Occupy thing, I was like, oh, can I use these powers for good and sort of contribute in some way that takes advantage of what I can offer, which is somewhat of an audience and fast typing.
Right, okay. And just to follow on that, so then how long would you say between that and the point of actually kind of the report it took?
I'm sorry, what?
Like the length of time for all of it, between the research and the report?
This was like midnight to 5 a.m.
Okay.
And then I used Storify to package it and post it online,
Okay, great. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Clarissa.
Hi, Baratunde. My name is John Kidenda.
Hey, John. Love the scarf.
Thank you. Thank you. I loved your piece on Fresh Air. That was really good.
Thank you.
I wanted to second her point on Gatto. He's a Kenyan cartoonist and comedian and has been in that revolutionary space for an extended period of time, pre-dictator all the way to the democracy that we have now. Also wanted to cue you on 2 other really interesting comedy troupes out of Kenya that you might want to look into.
Okay.
One's called Ridiculous, and they were instrumental in the transition from really into real democracy in Kenya. And I believe they got
ridiculous.
Yeah, really good. And I think they got a Knight Foundation grant, and they now do a piece called XYZ Zone that uses puppets.
I saw that. I saw the puppets.
Fantastic stuff. So definitely
beautiful.
check them out.
Thank you.
And great speech.
Thank you so much. Dude in the green shirt.
Hey, Baratunde, thank you for this excellent presentation. I loved it.
Thank you.
One quick question, though. Where is El Dorado today?
Too cool for school, man. He has transcended the physical plane and just sort of merged with all things that attempt to be a watered-down version of what he represented. I don't know. That was extremely unnecessary spin.
Hi there.
Hi there.
My name's Miriam, and I'm from Canada.
Thank
And
you.
I'm a software developer, and I liked your example about the comedy in the code. Thank you for that.
Thank you.
My question for you is that a lot of what this comedy deals with is actually quite tragic. And you used a Roman quote, and one thing that the ancients knew is that it's really hard to have funny without a lot of sorrow. So can you talk about your experience of sorrow in your comedy?
Damn, going for the jugular. Yes. I think, I've been doing stand-up for 10 years, and for the first few years, it existed at a certain comfortable, superficial level. Not to say that I was a coward, but I wasn't going as deep as I could have. And it was actually my mom's passing that triggered a deeper relationship between me and a lot of these stories. And the night she passed, I wrote a letter to like all our family friends. I emailed it, I blogged it. And it was sad, and it was, trying to honor her, but it was also funny because there were moments of humor in her life, obviously, and in her death. Hospitals are terrible and hilarious places. There was a meal, like in the list of meals, one of the meals was just called cold cheese. Why would you offer that as a meal? What kind of that's sick.
Some people love cheese.
Yeah, but that cold, that's just weird, man. So
Hot cheese is melted cheese.
Moments like that, even as she was kind of losing, because of the nutrient levels, you're losing your mental, capabilities. There was something funny about her, like forgetting who the president was, but remembering her laptop.
Yeah.
Right. Good priorities. So I think that moment triggered a deeper investigation myself of like, what do I talk about, and how much into darkness and tragedy can you go to find light?
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Hi, I'm Caroline Tuma. I'm a high school student.
Hey.
I was wondering, when you do a story and you cover a topic, are there any topics you think are off limits?
Not as a category, because that's too broad. I don't think it's about what you choose to talk about, but it's the way you choose to talk about it and the way you approach it. So a common example in stand-up is just like, you're going to talk about homelessness. You could go ahead and make a joke about a homeless person, but that's a waste of your power, right? You're picking on someone who's already a bit more vulnerable, and so it's an act of meanness and bullying. So in that sense, it's not talking about homelessness that's off limits. It's the intention and respect you have for the material that you approach that is more important than what, just the fact that you're addressing something. So I can't go out and say, like, don't talk about that, after giving a big old talk about freedom of speech, But I think there is intention and respect that are a part of those, and they work hand in hand.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, I found the keynote fascinating. I know this sounds like a paradox, but how important is anger in comedy?
Can be very important. I can't speak for all comedy. Actually, sure, I'm going to speak for all comedy right now. Spokesperson for comedy. I think, I'll speak from what I know, which is me. It's actually super important because there's a sense of injustice or something being wrong, whether it's a light issue, like, oh, my bill is off, or this wireless company treated me poorly, to a sense of, oh, this government is treating people poorly. There's a sense of something out of place, something out of whack, some lack of justice that is often the spark for commentary and for comedic commentary especially. That righteous indignation finds a home in a comedic voice where for some, a preacher, politician, or professor may find another outlet. The comedian would do it a different way.
And secondly, who were or are your influencers?
Everybody. I grew up listening to a lot of comedy. I grew up listening to Whoopi Goldberg and Richard Pryor and Red Fox, and watching a lot of British comedies like Chef and One Foot in the Grave and Garrison Keillor. So I had an eclectic early foundation before I ever thought I was funny. Those were the early parts. And nowadays, it's a lot of my peers. It's a lot of everything I showed on the screen today is an influence and is inspiring. I wouldn't have shown it if I didn't respect all those people and what they're doing as well.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Hi, Baratunde. Great speech. Thanks. One quick question. Do you think there's, or do you know of, or have you seen any comedians that you think have gone too far or that you don't find funny?
Most comedians I probably don't find funny. just because there's millions.
I mean, but
right?
just by going too far, too deep into a subject, or too offensive, or
Yeah, I can't think of an example to single out right now, but it goes back to the earlier student's question about topics that are on or off limits. If you are just getting up and sort of, like there's an operating range for like effective comedy. And on one side of that, you start to fall off the edge when you're just being mean, right? You're just like going after someone that's already the other, like, full of self-righteous. You're just right about everything, and you forget that you're also supposed to be funny, and you start sliding, off the rails on either end. You start to get into a bit of a dangerous zone. It's a delicate. Sometimes that path is actually pretty narrow, so it's not an easy thing, but it's an important thing to keep in mind.
Cool.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. This is the last question.
Hey, Baratunde.
Black person.
I loved your show, The Future Of. I was wondering if you were working on anything else in TV.
Thank you. Yeah, The Future Of was a show on Discovery Science. I got to wear a wetsuit. It was cool. And it's not continued. Right now, I'm just kind of doing book stuff and touring around, and there's some possibility of turning that into more show, but it's possibility at this point, like a lot of potential energy. Nothing's quite become kinetic, but I would like to keep talking to large groups of people and talking with larger groups and using video as a way to communicate that. So nothing to announce, but I'm open to it.
Maybe something on Twit Network, possibly?
Maybe something on Twit Network, possibly. Right? I just repeated you. I wasn't mocking you. I was agreeing.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I think I'm supposed to tell everybody to leave. So thank you all for coming. Have a great South by Southwest. I'm going to go have some whiskey now.